Coach P, the Army rowing crew coach for the United States Military Academy at West Point, was trying to pick the top 8 rowers for the varsity boat and the bottom 8 for the junior varsity boat for the 200-meter race. This team trained year-round, prepping for the national championships. In the spring, both crews went on a retreat to Atlanta, where Coach P conducted a series of seat races that determined which rowers were selected for the varsity boat. From Coach P's analysis of these races, he was able to rank the individual rowers from top to bottom to create each team. When he chose the teams and had them race, the varsity team defeated the JV team. However, when they returned to training in the Hudson River, the JV team began beating the varsity team consistently. The JV team was not getting any faster. It was the varsity team that was slowing down. In response to this, Coach P conducted a series of pairwise races that proved the varsity team had better individual team members, but the issue lied in the way they functioned as a team together. Coach P noticed that the varsity team members had poor attitudes in comparison to the JV team members, who had positive ones. To address this, Coach P turned to a person from the Center for Enhanced Performance to help them with team building and individual performances. The JV team responded well to this and practiced techniques to build new positive attitudes and confidence. The varsity team, however, did not respond well to this and perceived that any positive encouragement towards another teammate was stupid and silly. The JV team continued to defeat the varsity team. After each race, the varsity team would make personal attacks on their teammates from their boat, blaming each other for their team's shortcomings. On the other hand, the JV team would say positive things to their fellow teammates after each race. Coach P was looking at these issues behind why the varsity team was so defective and how he could resolve these issues in order to have a successful national championship.
Rowing crew is not an individual sport. Being a part of a rowing team that is comprised of the most elite athletes in the world does not guarantee victory. Olympic gold medalist James Cracknell mentions that you very quickly realize that, with rowing, your dreams are in someone else's hands, and their dreams are in yours. It is the ultimate team sport in that regard. You win together and lose together. The importance of having a positive team culture is vital to success in such a team-oriented sport. A significant flaw in the West Point rowing team's culture was that there were two very different cultures that existed between the JV and varsity teams. The varsity rowing team possesses many elements of a market culture. A market model is considered to be the most aggressive form of corporate culture models. The employees, or team members in this case, are encouraged to set very difficult goals and strive to achieve them. Their performance as individuals was closely monitored and is punished for failure. For example, the threat of being moved to the JV boat. Emphasis on individual performance is thought to lead to greater achievement for the entire team. But this type of culture is not successful for such a team-oriented sport because each varsity member was so focused on their own efforts, they did not think as a collective. They weren't able to fight towards a shared goal, instead ending up blaming each other for their poor performances. Before each race, the team would hold a meeting to discuss strategy and psych themselves up. At the meeting's end, the varsity team would frequently shout, "Row hard and finish clean," demonstrating their need for success and high individual performance. The JV team would end their meeting with the words, "Nothing to lose." More examples of this individualistic culture can be seen in the varsity's emails, where one teammate wrote, "I never thought I would be the weak link, but on this race, I'm sure of it." Almost all of the other varsity rowers wrote back to the coach, not with words of encouragement, but of words of blame. The JV team has a stronger culture than the varsity team, which is one of the reasons for the success compared to their physically stronger varsity rowers. The JV culture possessed attributes such as trust and integrity, responsibility, and communication. The JV team took responsibility for their performance as a team and not as individuals. One email sent to the JV team mentions that everyone has rowed enough races to know that you win some and you lose some. Just remember, everyone on the crew wants to win as much as you do. Another email from a JV member writes, "Push comes to shove in that last 100 meters. We're rowing for every guy in that boat because we don't want to let them down." This email shows that the JV team has created a bonding relationship with their teammates, which helps to build a team-oriented family culture. Coach P's priority should be to align both the varsity and JV team to one unified team culture.
As we presented in the previous slide, culture can be seen and shaped through communication. In this segment, I will be talking about the team dynamics between the team as a whole, JV and varsity team separately. The team varsity and JV team differ psychologically and physically from one another. But in this case, the most important difference between the success of both teams is in the psychological aspect, in which there should have been a common goal to build team camaraderie and trust. As we have discussed before, when Coach P chose the teams, he relied on the strength of the players, placing the strongest crew members in the varsity team and the bottom crew members on the junior varsity team according to their performance at the camp or retreat. So therefore, after the retreat, Coach P really noticed that the JV team consistently outperformed the varsity team. This created hostility and friction among members in the varsity team. Coach P, alongside that, noticed that cheers between both teams differed greatly, such as, and they created their own subcultures. For example, junior varsity team cheered along one another with encouragement and enthusiasm, with the goal of succeeding together, saying things such as, we will succeed together or we will fail together. And most importantly, recognizing that the quote, we are not rowing for ourselves, coach or army crew, we are rowing for every guy in the boat because we don't want to let them down. So they really created a form of consensus and community. On the contrary, the varsity team focused on rowing with their greatest strength individually. The case presents that varsity members focused on finger pointing and complaining to Coach P via email about one another. So really the main juxtaposition of dynamics between both teams presented the subcultures between boats. The junior varsity team truly focused on team and synchronization to each other, and instead of behaving as a team with a goal of performing together. Additionally, JV members use slogans out of practice such as nothing to lose, and the varsity team member focused on things such as finish clean and row hard. So at the time of the national competition, the JV team portrayed the strength of their team dynamics, and at the completion of the varsity's performance, in the review of the season on behalf of the coach, the varsity team could barely stand each other. They could not socialize with one another, and they just expressed their enthusiasm for the season to be over. We analyzed the dynamics of the difference between the groups. The JV team used some elements of leadership from our book, written by Kouzes and Posner, such as celebrating the values of victories of each member. The leader of the team in the JV group actively created a spirit of community. This was really not mentioned in the case, but with a great leader, there would not have been a sense of community. Each member was personally involved in the success of the rest of their teammates. Further, the case mentions the lack of an effective leader in the varsity team. Therefore, the varsity team performed as a group versus a team under an effective leader who created a sense of community.
According to Kouzes and Posner's model of the 5 essential practices of leadership, Coach P was not an effective leader. Number 1, model the way. As the leader, Coach P needed to set the example and be the role model for both teams. Instead of creating a culture of trust where both teams commit to the shared values of teamwork, some of the varsity team members accused him of creating a rift between the JV and varsity teams by having the two teams compete against each other. After the practices and races, Coach P noticed that the varsity team would critique each other's performance with negative comments, but he didn't intervene and instead told them to communicate through email. Number 2, inspired a shared vision. Coach P trained his crew members for endurance and technique. However, as important as their individual skills were, teamwork and synchronizing their rowing was just as crucial. In order for the crew to adapt to one another's strokes, trust is required among the team members. However, Coach P considered the team selections based solely on their physical performance of the members and not on the psychological. Because of this, and making the JV and varsity team compete against each other could be the reason why the varsity team was critical when they were critiquing and blaming each other. Therefore, he did not inspire a shared vision of teamwork, whether they win or lose. Number 3, challenge the process. According to Kouzes and Posner, exemplary leaders take actions for the better, and when there are mistakes or failures, then they promote learning from building upon these experiences. Coach P did not do this. When the varsity team kept slowing down and losing, Coach P conducted a series of paired races and realized that the JV team was faster because they functioned better as a team. However, knowing this, Coach P didn't guide the varsity team to learn from their mistakes and to focus more on their team cohesiveness rather than individual skills. Number 4, enable others to act. Kouzes and Posner also mentioned that effective leaders create a climate for learning and trust so that the members feel safe around each other. Coach P did not do this. Instead of having the varsity team meet and talk about their mutual goals and developing a winning mentality, he had them just email each other. This resulted in the crew not talking to one another about their issues, but complaining directly to Coach P and blaming each other. If Coach P had the varsity team meet face-to-face, they would be more comfortable with expressing their ideas because the interaction would be more personal. Number 5, encourage the heart. Coach P also did not reinforce the importance of working collaboratively and helping each other out. There were no leaders in the teams, and instead there were several team disruptors, with individual believing that they were the one carrying the boat. With the varsity team, because they kept losing to the JV team and didn't want to admit to their own mistakes, the crew lacked team spirit. Coach P needed to encourage the varsity team to have positive face-to-face interactions and to act more as a cohesive team. One way that they could do this is by having team building sessions and having them set common goals and values.
Recommended courses of action. For the short term, Coach P needs to change the individual mindset of the varsity into the unity mindset. Varsity needs to build trust and respect for each member. They need to build an effective communication system within the varsity that build it within the JV's team. Also, each member of the varsity should know something about their teammates. He has to develop a team building concept. At the end, there were 3 options for Coach P to consider. The first option is to switch the varsity and junior varsity boats. The benefit of this is that the JV is performing better than the varsity. The conflict is that the JV does not want to move into the varsity team and change their status, which can cause the JV to change their identity. This could result in the JV losing the competition. The second option is to switch individuals, but it can make it worse since the varsity and JV do not acknowledge each other. We decide to pick the third option, which intervenes to improve the varsity boat performance since there are better athletes. Coach P needs to create a better understanding of the team function. For the long-term course of action, Coach P has to change the old culture and change it to a learning culture. This culture will develop commitment to learning. They will attract the value of learning, reflection, experimentation, proactive problem solvers, and learners. Leadership should be able to send a message how important of a learning culture is. Coach P should have a directive leadership role since varsity have an external locus of control. Varsity was blaming everyone except themselves. Also, when the task is unstructured or there's a conflict between work groups, a more directed style will be useful. The directed leadership has some downsides, which involves a lack of group involvement. Therefore, Coach P should blend the transformational leadership style with directed leadership style. Transformational leaders focus on the growth of the group by intensely motivating them, treating them like individuals, being inspired role models, and developing a vision. Their outlook on the world is positive. People like taking on responsibility when the challenges and values are drawing on. This style is used in situations where change is needed and unity has to be created from a long-term vision and mission. Effective team self-management is impossible unless someone in authorized sets the direction for the team work. There was no leader in the varsity team. Subcultures have to merge to be able to function as a team. Once it is done, then we freeze the culture. Key lessons we have learned. Communication is vital to forming a successful team culture. Positive reinforcement is an integral part to a successful team culture. Team members are acting as individuals rather than a team. Getting to know others firsthand is essential to cultivating trust and collaboration. Sharing common values and beliefs creates a greater sense of community. Knowing about the amount of help people are willing to give one another, as this turnout is a highly accurate predictor of team effectiveness.